So we'll be starting with the 1.5-minute opening statements from the candidates. We've decided to go in alphabetical order. Kaylee, you'll be starting. All right, are you ready to? Oh, this is our timer, I should say. Natalia, she'll be giving you a 10-second warning. So watch for the red cards. If they come up, that means you need to be aware of your time. All right, so you ready to go? All right, Kaylee, you can start.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Arkson, and I'm running for re-election as the chairperson of the UVSS with Refresh Uvic. It's been an exciting week. Yesterday, we took the first steps towards the creation of a brand new system of mental health supports at Uvic involving students and faculty. I have been the executive lead on the UVSS mental health campaign, and we secured the first UVSS grant in 50 years for assist training for students, staff, and faculty, created a mental health week, and secured mental health first aid training for the fall. Mental health is a very important topic to me, but we do so much more at the UVSS. This year, I oversaw the creation of a campaign promoting student rights, improving international representation on the UVSS board, and increasing parking for students with mobility issues. We strengthened our harassment policies, created new scholarships, and in partnership with the Women's Center, we took back the night. We've taken great strides, but we're just getting started. With your continued support in my position as UVSS chair, my team and I will make the sub an example of environmental sustainability on campus. We will increase student access to counseling and mental health supports. We will make the UVSS Food Bank a charitable organization with a goal of making sure that no student ever goes hungry. We will face the issue of homelessness head on as we fight for more affordable housing. And we will fight for needs-based grants. Because when we see stories in the news that students are so buried in debt that the government is sending ICBC after them, we know that we've gone too far. We will not rest until every single student is able to access the education that they deserve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bronte, you are next.
Hi, folks. My name is Bronte Shields, and I am a fourth-year political science and applied ethics major from the small community of Galliano Island, BC. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize as a settler to this land that these are the traditional territories of the Wasanic and Lekwungen peoples, and that while we endeavor to do good work in this place, we are always colonialism is an ongoing process, and we continue to work in a colonial framework. And I hope that we will all be mindful of that today. Growing up on a small island, I really value community, and through my time at Uvic, I have developed my own community in Victoria, including the fine folks that I've worked with this week with Involve Uvic. That sense of community has been integral to my time at Uvic. As a low-income student, I recognize how particularly stressful this can make life, and it was my community that helped me to keep it together. Through my time at Uvic, I've had the opportunity to spend a year abroad in England and a month putting my degree to practice by doing research with the Colonial Legacies Field School in South Africa. I recognize that many people at Uvic have not been as privileged to have these opportunities or to have found a home away from home as I have. I feel that the UVSS has the potential to make Uvic a more open and inclusive space and enable students to pursue their passions and a place in which campus community can be cultivated. From providing one monthly meal and showcasing local Uvic talent in the sub to involving the greater student body in social activism, I think that the society has much to offer. From my time as a research and communications officer, I have become aware of the resources the UVSS has, the great work that is done within.
All right, thank you. And Justin.
Hi, my name is Justin Whitehead. I'm running as chairperson with the Independents. In all the other interviews that I've done, I've given a pretty good outline of our platform points, I think. So maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about myself today. I spent 2 years with the Students' Union at North Island College, as where I was before I came here. I'm now a third-year student. I'm studying political science, economics, and applied ethics here at Uvic. I'm a climate reality leader. I was fortunate to be trained by the former Vice President of the United States, Al Gore. That happened a couple of years ago, and I've been working really closely with that organization. I was also a member of the Education Council at North Island College, which is equivalent to the Senate here. I sat on quite a few committees there, and I really enjoyed working with the university administration and with the students on various policy issues. And I'm a bit of a writer. I kind of blog online. Been doing that for almost a decade now. The support there has risen to about somewhere around 800,000 subscribers that listen to me ramble on about political issues, human rights issues. I read about feminism. The bulk of it is probably environmental issues. And that's taken up a lot of my time over the years, but I've really enjoyed that engagement. And I just really look forward to working with the UVSS in the coming years. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I will ask, because this is being broadcast live as well on the radio, we had trouble yesterday with the cheering and our levels. So if we can have for the remainder of the debate, if we could have maybe less cheering, and then we can also keep the pace of the debate going as well. All right, Hugo, I believe you have the first question.
The first question is, what do you believe the role of student government should be? Monte?
Me first. I strongly believe that the role of student government, first and foremost, is to advocate for student rights, and that student government plays an important role in making sure that all students' voices are heard.
You're finished? Yeah.
Is it only 30 seconds or the answer time?
Oh, we have a timer here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You have a full minute and a half.
Oh, okay. That's not what my email said. That's cool. Well, I'll continue. I believe that particularly in relation to the UVSS, we have the ability to stand up for student rights in regards to the housing campaign, in how we want to tackle sustainability issues such as the divestment campaign, in how we want to work with mental health and wellness in general on campus. I believe that the UVSS is a great support system that it can be available to students to build community on campus and to promote student wellness as well as students' own pursuits as a source of resources. I think that student government, first and foremost, is here to represent students to the university and to ensure that their voices are heard when often they aren't.
And Justin?
Well, as I said in the other interviews in response to this question, I think, you're going to elect an executive of, a handful of people, even with the 11 or so directors at large. It's not really a large number of people to be making decisions for 18,000 students. That's why our group wanted to implement a sort of a town hall style meeting that would happen every month. Nothing formal, people would be invited to come. The board could be there. We could report on what we've been doing that month with student funds, and just, a little bit of back and forth about how students think things are going, what they'd like to see changed, how they'd like to be engaged with us. And I think that, we could do a lot more work as far as seeking student input for an organization of this size. I also believe that student government should be sort of a liaison between the provincial and federal governments and also the university. To that end, I spent last week, I was lobbying on behalf of the Alliance of BC Students. I was at the legislature. I had to talk with a lot of MLAs and a minister about a lot of the issues that Kaylee and Bronte have both mentioned already, needs-based grants and affordable housing for students and just many other issues. And yeah, that's what I think the student government should be. Thank you.
And Kaylee.
I think that the student government is supposed to be a leader. We're supposed to be a leader in social issues, such as getting out in your community and any things like homelessness. Being financial leaders, because we use $12 million of students' money every single year. Being environmental leaders. I think that the UVSS has lots of policies around how to be more sustainable, but there's also tons of things that we could be doing to be making it even more sustainable. Upgrading appliances, looking into wind and solar energy. 2, campaigns based on what students want. So for example, the provincial government just cut funding for adult-based education, and that's something that our slate really cares about, especially having a student on it who used that to come and be at UVic. Making sure we're asking for needs-based grants, because we're the only province without one. Mental health, I think that's really important in all of our campaigns because they're all kind of tied together. Making sure that we are advocating for community and inclusion, providing services for students so that they have more access to education and don't have to spend as much money. So for example, we have our food bank, we have the UPass, and lastly, promoting student initiatives, because I think we have a lot of students on our campus who are doing really excellent things, and I think that we should be encouraging them to continue on with that.
All right. In the 2014-2015 budget, the UVSS food outlets were expected to run a loss after benefiting from the closure of the University Center cafeteria last year. Similarly, some students are interested in exploring the idea of having franchises return to campus. Should UVSS food outlets be expected to at least break even, or would you be open to reintroducing franchises onto campus? And I believe we start with Justin.
Well, I was talking with somebody about this issue earlier, and the main problem that I see with the food services in the sub is that if we're operating at a loss, that's a loss to every student. And the students who buy food on campus are typically not the ones, they're not the same people who are in the most need, right? You don't have the poorest of students coming on campus and, eating a $10 meal every day, several times a day. So if we're operating a loss, it seems as though we're kind of supporting students that can already afford to eat on campus. So I think that that's kind of a backwards approach. I would like to see a lot more funding go towards the food bank rather than, operating these food services at a loss. As far as franchises go, I'd be open to that idea. It'd be nice to see some local franchises, or I don't know if there are local franchises, just some local businesses that definitely would have to have, sustainable practices. I'd also really like to see more vegan-friendly options. I'm actually a vegan myself, and it's been really hard to find food on campus. I find that, I'm bringing my own food to campus every day now because it's just been very difficult to find any available options.
Yeah. Right. Kaylee.
So this idea has been brought up multiple times over the last few years. The no side of it is because, a lot of students, when they come to UVic, they come here many a time specifically because we don't have franchises. We're one of the only universities across Canada that doesn't have any. Also, we need to keep in mind that we have a union in the building, and I know that they're going to have a lot of issues in terms of, are we able to have just student jobs and not have to have people within the community and paying them, even though it's a student-run organization for students. Two, making sure that we can have the wages high enough and be able to set our own wages, because I know a lot of franchises don't pay their employees enough. The only reason, some people have said yes to it is because UVic right now has a monopoly in terms of food services on our campus. So it would be nice to see, something other than that. But I think the main way we can combat not having franchises and being more competitive is actually by upgrading our menus. I think that Mystic Market, when they unveiled all of their new menus, they're really competitive and they have a lot of better deals than we do right now. So, making sure we're being competitive with Mystic Market, making sure that we have higher quality food. Also, like Justin said, looking into vegan options, making sure maybe we have a salad bar in the sub, which we don't have currently, to just kind of promote wellness. And also, the other major thing that we want to do this year is have a one card in the sub, because a lot of students like myself who live in residence can't access food services in here right now just because we're already spending $1,000 on our one card, and it would just be kind of like a waste of money for a lot of students to come in and spend more than that. So I would like to see the one card, and I think we can implement that over the next year.
All right. Bronte.
As Justin and Kaylee said, I feel like franchises in the sub are, well, as Kaylee said, I feel like franchises in the sub are not something that we should be considering. I think that part of the value of the sub is that we have independent businesses within it, and that we keep these businesses running. I think that there is the potential, as Kaylee said, to upgrade these menus and to make them more competitive. I think that gluten-free and vegan options are a great opportunity. I myself am a vegan, and one of our director-at-large candidates, Maxine, is extremely passionate about bringing these to the table. As far as operating at a loss, I do not, as Justin said, we don't want that to be impacting students. However, I think it is possible to be more competitive and to continue to run independent businesses within the student union building, as I believe that the student union building brings opportunities to students to have jobs that are well paid and to continue working within a union. And I don't think that franchises are an option in this case. I also don't think that they bring the same sense of community to campus. I think that we need to continue to work on and to continue to be competitive and not to be stagnant in the way that we've working on our menus, and to look at avenues in which we can expand upon them. But I think that is potentially here, and there's no reason to look into bringing in franchises that could potentially be detrimental to student jobs or student wellness.
Thank you. While the declared legal costs of the UVSS have gradually decreased over the last 2 years from approximately $130,000 to $83,000, $100,500 has still been set aside for legal costs in the 2014-2015 budget. As a comparison, Simon Fraser University budgeted $16,000 for legal costs for the 2014-2015 year. The UBC Alma Mater Society, which represents more students, set aside $30,000 in 2013-2014, and notably only spent $6,500 the year before. The question is, what exactly has the UVSS been spending its legal fees on, and is it prudent for the Student Society to allocate that amount of money for that cause? Kaylee?
Thank you. So the reason we have a lot of money is because, one, we had 2 lawsuits this year. I can't get into the details of those because a few of them are still ongoing, and that would be like a breach of confidentiality. But we have that set aside just in case, something does come up. Sometimes there's events on campus where students feel unsafe and they file complaints, and that's a legitimate thing to do. And then, sometimes there's lawsuits that come out of that, and we want to make sure we're never caught off guard and we have enough money in place so that we don't have to lose a legal case that is very winnable, and we can make sure we're still having safer spaces on our campus. One of the main things that I did, and I worked with the board a lot this year, was to create our harassment policy and move it under equity and human rights, because what we're thinking is that would be a more fair and equitable way of doing things, because you have a third party who can now oversee all the complaints and see, what do they think are the best recommendations, recommend those to the board, and if we do take them, they're more legally sound, which means when people go after us for making that decision, they have less of a case, which is fantastic. And also, we have pretty expensive lawyers. We have one that's in Vancouver, but he's the best. And with him, we just won one of our legal cases, so I'm very happy to be with them.
Bronte?
As Kaylee said, I think that those legal resources are there in the case that students do feel unsafe or that they are necessary on campus. I think that the harassment policy that was put in place by the board this year is important in making sure that those complaints are made and that they are legitimate and worth pursuing. However, I think that another great way which to work with this is the trigger warning policy that me and Kaylee Zakis have been working on since November of this year. I believe that by ensuring that students are warned about circumstances which they will be entering into and in which they know what kind of situations will be happening on campus, as well as campaigns such as the Let's Get Consensual campaign that ensure that events run by the UVSS are safer spaces. And I feel like my slate this year is working very hard to make braver, safer, and more inclusive spaces on campus in which students feel safe and in which we can mitigate any potential harm that is done. Kaylee Zakis and myself have been emailing other student unions as well as other universities to see what kinds of trigger warning policies they currently have in place and seeing what kind of policy we can put in place, especially in regards to clubs and course unions on campus.
All right, Justin?
I pretty much just echo what Bronte just said. It's usually in these cases, it's a policy issue. I'm sure there's lots of different areas within the UVSS policy that could be firmed up and made a little more clear as to, leave less ambiguity as far as, what the rules are. And that would also leave less opportunity for people to, misrepresent those policies and use that in a legal argument. One, for example, the clubs and course union policy, I don't know how that looks compared to some of the other policies with UVSS, but it's quite barren. I've had a lot of discussions this year with course union leaders, and they'd like to see some policy changes there, but I was actually going to run for that position, but luckily after things changed, I spoke with Kaylee Zakis, and she said she's really open to working with me on all of those issues. So yeah, no concerns there. I think that it's definitely something that we can deal with.
All right, and we have a response, 30-second response from Kaylee.
Awesome. I just want to talk about the trigger warning policy a little bit. So I know that it's been worked on. It hasn't been passed yet. And there's still a lot of work that needs to go into that policy, because the last time that I saw it, it was really vague, because basically it says, well, we would just tell clubs and course unions just put trigger warnings on anything that they think could be a trigger warning to students. And I think that when you do that, that leaves it up to the club to decide whether or not they think that their stuff is, worth having a trigger warning, and if we tell them that it's worth having a trigger warning and they disagree, they can turn around and sue us. So I think it's really important that when we're crafting that, to be making sure that we're doing it in a way that we don't get sued.
All right, and a 30-second response from Justin as well.
Just kind of echoing that again. In the policy, a trigger warning policy, it would be nice to see maybe a committee formed within the UVSS to maybe review any materials that are going to go up that could be of a sensitive nature, because like Kaylee just said, if you leave it up to clubs, sometimes just people get excited about their cause, and sometimes consideration is not the number one priority.
All right. Did you have your hand up, Bronte?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A 30-second response from you.
I don't believe that the purpose of the trigger warning policy was ever to leave it fully up to clubs to decide whether or not something was triggering. It would involve negotiations between them and the student affairs director, as well as if something was of triggering, it would of course be, this would be negotiated between the club and the student affairs director. However, as a chairperson, this isn't necessarily within my ability to write this legislation. I believe it leads up to Kaylee Zakas's portfolio this year.
All right. Moving on. All right, this is sort of a two-part question. Speaking with non-UVSS attendees of committee meetings, or students and people involved with advocacy groups and things of that nature in the sub, there's the impression that there's a lot of time wasting going on at the committee level. In addition, many committees don't meet at all. How would you improve the efficiency and effectiveness of committee meetings, and what would you do to streamline UVSS committees? I believe we're starting with Bronte, yes.
Yeah, I've worked for the UVSS for this year, and I do understand that the committees and the amount that are held can limit the amount of work that is done on the board, but a lot of the times they are also necessary. I think something that we've done this year with the External Relations Director, Greg Atkinson, is that we've made separate committees for each campaign so that those can be meeting with members who are particularly interested in something, say as Make Transit Work or housing, and those can meet on a bi-weekly basis and then hold a monthly campaigns meeting. And this mitigates the fact that we're able to get more work done specifically on that campaign, and also ensures that campaigns isn't having to be held weekly. I do think that campaigns need to be held, certain campaigns should be being held more frequently than they currently are. I mean, certain committees should be being held more frequently than they currently are, because policy needs to be drafted and the strategic plan needs to be worked on. There are certain committees, I believe, that aren't necessarily necessary. However, I think that important work is done within committee work, and we just need to be ensuring that we are engaging the student population outside of committees as well, and that work is being done both within the boardroom and outside of it.
All right, Justin.
Well, I mean, the three of us just did a radio interview the other day, and one of the things that was brought up, Kaylee, you mentioned that you sat on 40 committees at one point. I kind of think that if you ask any MLA or MP, or you go down to the States, you talk to a congressman or senator, nobody sits on that many committees, because you can't possibly commit yourself to that many things at one time. And I feel that something that could be done to help with the efficiency of these committees would be definitely to allow the people the different committees, whoever's portfolio those fall under, allow those people, you have to trust those people to be able to run those committees on their own and to be able to, report back. I think that's the job of a chairperson, is to kind of be an administrative role, not necessarily a micromanaging role. So that's something that I think could definitely, I would do differently. I would definitely put more trust into the other portfolio positions to handle those committees on their own. Thank you.
All right, and Kaylee.
Awesome. So I think one of the main ways we can cut down the length of time is one by having an agenda and sticking to it. I think a lot of the time, sometimes we'll have like side conversations and talk about things that aren't necessarily relevant in that moment, and it kind of drags things on. And when people sit on multiple committees, that means that you're just kind of wasting time talking about things you didn't necessarily need to. So having a clear set of objectives when you go into a meeting saying, we want to have this resolved by the time that we leave so we can work towards something and be moving forward. I think that, you know, in terms of being on a committee, making sure that you're figuring out what the tasks are and then delegating them to people on that committee, which we did during the mental health committee, making sure that people took on certain things, took on the lead on certain projects, and made sure that those got done. I think another way of doing it is putting updates online in terms of agendas, so students can kind of check in and say, hey, like they're talking about something that I really care about today. Advocacy groups can do the same, making sure you're emailing advocacy groups when you're working on a specific policy or something that relates to them. And I think that I would really disagree with the comment that Justin just made about sitting on too many committees. I think that, you know, I'm someone that really wanted to get involved. And when you're that passionate, you try spreading yourself in terms of trying to find different committees within the university, which is really what I did. And most of them happened to be within the university. And I was kind of the only UVSS rep on those. And I kind of just asked to sit on those committees so that I could make sure I knew what was going on and we could collaborate as much as possible. But I think in terms of also mental health, you know, I sat on probably 5 to 6 committees that were just mental health specific, so I could make sure I was collaborating as much as possible and making sure that I wasn't planning events when another student union or other club or course union on campus was planning at the same time, so we can make sure they were both successful.
All right. And we have a 30-second response from Justin.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused there because at the beginning of your statement you said it's important that people not sit on too many committees, and then at the end you said you sat on 40 of them. Also, during the radio interview, Bronte asked if, she mentioned that you hadn't been sitting on the campaigns committee. And you said you didn't have to because you were sitting on 40 other committees. And there was also another one called the University Relations Committee, which was set up. And you were the chair for that committee, but it never actually met. I'm just wondering if you could respond to that. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, Kaylee, you can respond.
The reason I didn't sit on campaigns committee is because I think that we had a group of people like Greg, other executives who were working on those campaigns that could take them on fully. And so I kind of focused on the mental health campaign a little bit more this year because it fell into my portfolio this year because we didn't want to put too much on the external relations director. Secondly, that committee didn't meet specifically because I sat on both of those bodies and therefore I knew all those people and we continue to have conversations outside of the UVSS. And so I was constantly liaising with them and therefore there wasn't really a reason to set them all down when I was always with them anyways.
So each year, candidates rank student engagement at the top of their priority list. However, with a 17% voter turnout last year and a consistent failure to meet quorum during general meetings, increasing student engagement appears to be easier said than done. What makes your plan more likely to succeed than previous plans? Justin?
Well, with regards to the town hall meetings that I mentioned, I've had a few people ask, if you can't get quorum for annual general meetings and special general meetings, how are you supposed to get people to come out for the town hall meetings? But I actually would turn that around and say, if we're having a monthly meeting that anybody is welcome to come to, students start showing up for those meetings, getting more engaged with the UVSS, I think that would in turn actually improve turnout to the annual general meetings and special general meetings. I mean, I don't know what else you can possibly do. I mean, the UVSS does do a bit of advertising for their meetings, but I really think that there needs to be a ground level opportunity for students to meet on a regular basis and engage with their board of this $12 million organization. It's like I've said before, there's a handful of us. There's like 18,000 students. I mean, this is your student union. It's not ours. So, we're here to kind of help run things, but, it says right in the mission statement that, it's your student society. We're here to promote and enact, your passions and what you would like to see on campus. Thank you.
All right. Kaylee.
So first I'll start with SAGM and AGMs. I think that every year we kind of do the same thing. We have pizza, we have prizes, and we kind of hope that incentivizes people to come out, and it clearly doesn't work. So I think what we need to be doing is looking at bringing in entertainment, maybe have a club and course union do some sort of event during it, or for example, we had the marijuana debate the week before. If we brought that to being on the same day and said you get free entry if you come beforehand, that would probably work. I think also looking at structuring them differently. Maybe seeing if we can have online voting and having a ratification process instead. Maybe tying it to academics, working with political science professors and seeing if maybe they can put 0.5% for at least first-year students. If they come and do a report on it, that could really help them academically. In terms of getting people to vote more, I think you should be also incentivizing voting in terms of maybe free scholarships, tickets to Royals games, things like that. And then also in terms of engagement, we came up with having a Uvic survey that I've already talked to the university about having in September. And that survey will be asking people about demographics, about how many student loans do you have, that kind of stuff, so we can have actual data from Uvic to take when we're talking to the provincial government. And secondly, having field trips, going out and doing things with students, like going to Bouchard Gardens, going to the museum, making sure that they're seeing Victoria. And I think that'll really work in terms of retention rates of students.
Thank you. All right, Bronte.
This year I've had the pleasure of working for the UVSS as a research and communications officer, which often means that I work with volunteers. That means that a lot of the students that are engaged in the UVSS already, I've had relationships with, and that's been a great experience to see the students that are engaged and are interested, but I do think that that's a limited amount of the student population. And I think that that's because, I was talking to a student today on campus, and I think that's because students it's stigmatized to be involved. We need to encourage students that it is a positive thing to be doing, and more than just giving incentives and prizes, but to encourage them that they can pursue leadership activities within these roles, that this can be a passion that they can pursue on their own, and to not just sit on a committee or be involved on Pancake Breakfast Day, but to lead campaigns on their own and go out and take on initiatives that they are passionate about, because I think that that's important. And we've seen from movements on campus, such as Divest Uvic, that students have the power to organize on their own, and they have the power to pursue passions on their own. And the UVSS needs to be a leader in that, but not just a delegator. We need to be encouraging students that the UVSS is a place for them to promote their own interests and promote their own activities, as well as a place that can give them those activities to pursue. We cannot know everything that students are interested in, and it is important that we engage them and ask them. And I think that is why meetings like the AGM and SAGM should remain on a personal level, because I think that students should be engaged personally.
All right, we have a 30-second response from Kaylee.
Okay, I have a lot to say, so I'm going to make it quick. First, town halls, great idea. The problem this year, though, is, having talked to Kaylee Sakix, you did say that you felt a little bit uncomfortable getting on stage and maybe having people personally attack you. So I think we're going to have to negotiate that a little bit. And two, I don't like the word stigma, because when you're talking about stigma, for example, around mental health, people not feeling that they're able to come out and talk about that issue. And I don't think there's stigma around volunteering for an organization.
And a response from Bronte.
Sorry, was it me?
Did you put your hands up?
Yeah. So I wasn't sure what that said. I agree with Kelly on the fact that I think it's about town halls in the sense, not so much that I think that it's a potential for attack, but I do believe that with the lack of student engagement that is currently on campus, it'll be difficult to engage students in another meeting. And I think that there are more creative ways in which to engage students. However, when I mean stigma, I just mean that students feel like being involved isn't cool, that being involved isn't interesting, and that they do not, and that is an issue. We need to teach them that being involved is important.
All right, thank you. All right, we have 3 questions, one for each candidate now, and so the candidate it's directed to will have a chance to answer, and then the other 2 candidates will have a chance to also respond. The first one is for you, Bronte. One of Involve Uvic's platform points is to lobby the university to change the current Saturday to Wednesday winter term reading break to a Monday to Friday one. Will that happen this year? If so, how?
I believe that the amount of rest that students get with a 3-day reading break right now does not allow for them to properly does not facilitate mental wellness, and that by adding 1 day to the beginning of the year and 1 to the end, or allocating that with the university administration, this is possible and will give students more time to rest or return home, and it, in general, contribute to better mental wellness on campus.
You each have a chance for it. Yeah, Justin.
The only issue I see with that is that we already run until December 21st. And I think Uvic is one of the only universities that has a reading break in the first semester as well. I don't know. I mean, I found it quite useful this year to have the break that we did get. I'm not sure if it would be possible within the university structure itself to extend the semester. I don't think they'd go to the 22nd. It's the day before, everybody leaves for holidays, and I kind of doubt that they would move it up. But I don't know if that's something that students are interested in. Then, sure.
All right, Kaylee.
Helen, do I have?
Sorry, I think I was unclear there. It's still the 1.5 minute response.
Okay.
You guys all can still respond to this question, and then you raise your hand if you want the 30-second response again. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, great. I have a lot to say. All right, so this has already gone to Senate. Senate said no. Faculty were completely against it. One, because you'd have to start school earlier, 2 days earlier, or end 2 days later, because they weren't able to modify their class schedules to be able to do that. Or they'll be giving out more readings, which means if you want to promote mental health and mental wellness and things like that, having more readings while you're off, I don't think is going to facilitate that. I think the better thing is to institute a policy like other universities have, where you don't have anything due, midterms, anything, 2 days after you get back. And I think that will kind of help with the break a little bit. Also, there's an even amount of days in both semesters. And so when you start taking away days, what is that going to do for failure rates? I mean, first year engineering, first year science, a lot of those students are failing their courses. And I think that they need that more of that class time and more of that time with their teachers. And also you'll be paying even more for less classes. And I don't think that's worth the money.
All right, 30-second response from Bronte.
I'd just like to clarify there that there in no way is part of our plan to take away class days. I think that students should be ensured that they have the same amount of class time as they always have. I do think, however, that we've looked at maybe changing the reading week to the Thanksgiving weekend so that those 3 days can be allocated to that and include the weekend off so that students can have an entire day, because for students coming from outside of Victoria, having a week increases their ability to go home, which is important for mental wellness and important for their self-care.
Was your hand up, Justin? I didn't.
No, but I mean, I'll say something. Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, really, it's realistically, we're not going to move the semester forward. We're not going to start early. We're not going to end any later. If there was any fudge room in there, and if the faculty and university were open to it, and if that's something that the students really, really wanted, like I said, I mean, there's 18,000 of them. There's a handful of us. It's definitely something that I would advocate for if it was possible.
All right, thank you.
This question is for Kaylee. In the last campaign, you felt that reducing executive salaries was important, and you considered a $3,500 reduction in the current salary levels. However, to the best of our knowledge, that did not happen. What was the reason for that?
So when we ran the election last year, we kind of collectively, as the 5 executives who ran on Vision Uvic, we kind of said that we were going to donate part of our salary if we were elected. And when I was elected, I did do that. For example, there was a case in the summer with the food bank where we were kind of in between coordinators, and a lot of the shelves weren't being stocked, and so I'd go in and stock them. And there was one student who absolutely broke my heart, who came to my office and started crying and said that they have a family that they can't afford to give food to. And I went out and personally bought them groceries to make sure that they were able to afford feeding their kids and feeding their husband. And that's one of the reasons I'm running again, because I feel like that's what the chair can do. You can do advocacy work for individuals, and you can make sure that you're there when they need you. And so I made sure that I kept my promise, because that's what I've done the entire time.
Bronte, you can respond.
I believe that, what I recognize with what Kaylee has said, it's great that the ability to donate money and to donate food. I think the food bank is obviously in dire need of more supplies. But I do think that by cutting executive salaries, you make executive positions elite positions within the student body, and positions that can only be held by students who are of means. And not every student has the ability to work 35 plus hours a week and earn less money than executives are currently being paid, which is, I believe, around $15 an hour. This is a lot of work. Students should be valued for their work that they do on campus, and I believe that every executive on the board right now is valued for their work and does amazing work and deserves to be paid for that. I recognize that it is important to work within the community as well, but I feel like that can be done not necessarily just by financial means, and that by limiting it to students that have access to financial means, and limiting these positions to students that can afford to work these hours, you're also you're making this an elite position that students without these means cannot be representatives for their student body, which I believe is completely unfair.
Justin?
I mean, I echo what Bronte just said, and I think it's great, Kaylee, that you donated that money and that you were in a position to be able to do that. I know that you were on co-op this year, so you've been able to work a second job too. So, that's great too. That you were able to fill the extra time and make a little bit extra money there. But like for me personally, and for a lot of other students, if I win this position, I will not be eligible for any grants. Even students with disabilities, there's grants for tutoring, there's grants for technology. This position would just put any student in that position over the limit for being able to receive any of those grants either. So if you have to hire a tutor, you have to, purchase any assistive technology. If you were making any less than what it is right now, you would not be able to effectively do that. You wouldn't be able to remain as a student and do this position. So that would, the co-op position is available to some people. I don't think it would be available to all departments. This is very relatable to the political science, right? But if, science students, this wouldn't apply. So I think that it's important to keep it where it is. I don't think it's excessive at all. I think there was probably a lot of thought that went into this exact number, and it fits with the union wages as well. So, yeah.
All right, and we have a response, 30 seconds from Kaylee.
Awesome. So I think the important thing to recognize is this wasn't a policy change because I didn't want to make sure that other students in the future couldn't take on the responsibility because of lowering wages. It was more of a personal decision that I made in terms of saying that I would donate part of my salary, and I stuck to that promise. And I just want to make it clear that, also responding to your co-op question there, anyone can take co-op. In political science, it's not mandatory, it's optional, and I went in and I said, I said I would commit myself fully to this position if I was elected, and I want to find a way to do that, so that's why I went on co-op.
All right. Thank you. And we have two responses. Justin first.
Just quickly to that. I wasn't saying that nobody could do a co-op position. I was just saying that it wouldn't be open to all students, because running the UVSS would not be relevant co-op experience to somebody doing a biology degree, for example.
All right. And Bronte.
I'm just wondering, is it not somewhat problematic to run your campaign on the basis that you have the means to donate this money? As a low-income student, I'm not sure that I would be able to, and I feel like that gives an unfair disadvantage to elite students who are able to, say, donate this money. Whereas if you have student loans, you are taking less than 2 classes, you have to begin paying that loans back, which is another, and is, as an executive, I think you have to often take less than 3 classes to maintain your level of work. So I feel like by running on that platform, you're making this only position.
And again, a response from Kaylee.
I'm not also someone who is elite or anything like that. Like, I have my own student loans. The only reason I was able to come to UVic is because I'm on a scholarship, so I don't think that was a fair comment. But also, I also sometimes feel a little bit guilty. Like, I'm taking students' money to do a job, and I see students struggling. I see them not being able to get scholarships and bursaries to be able to stay at UVic. They're not able to use the food bank. They can only use it once a week, and that's sometimes not enough for a lot of students. And so I kind of said, you know what? I think it is quite a bit of money. I don't think I'm not going to use all of that in 1 year. I want to give it back to students, and if that means taking on more student loans, then fine. But that was my commitment, and that's what I did.
And the question for Justin. Justin, your campaign is somewhat more vague than the other 2 campaigns that are being run. Should student voters be worried or have apprehension about a lack of really solid platform points besides town hall debates or town hall meetings?
Okay, that's a fair point. No, they shouldn't. Really, at the end of the day, there's going to be a mix of candidates from all these, from both slates that get elected. So to say that, one slate's, platform is going to be implemented I don't think that's very realistic to say. We ran as the independents, kind of it's an ironic kind of term because there's more than one of us, right? But we did run on that one common platform, is that there's a few of us, there's tons of students. We're here to work for them. We're not here to kind of. We all have passions, and that's important. I think that there is a lot of diverse passion within even both Evolve and Refresh slates as well, the different candidates. I mean, yeah, there's a common thread, but they definitely have individual passions as well. But again, it's great that we're all passionate about things, but if those passions don't line up with what the students actually want to be done with their student society, then I don't think that we should be, imposing those on them. But again, it's great that there's so many people who, are interested in sustainability and helping students, secure needs-based grants. And I mean, there's so many issues on both groups that I'm so happy to see. And, like Jordan, Jade, and myself, we have individual, unique passions that we bring to the table. And yeah, I think that's perfectly fine.
All right, Kaylee, do you have anything to add?
As a rebuttal, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think it is important, at least for the executives, to have a well thought out campaign in terms of what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, because I think, there's going to be quite of a mix of DAOs, and there always is every single year, but the executive gets to handle their own portfolio, and therefore it's really important that you kind of say, this is what I will do if elected within my own portfolio, so then students can kind of look at everyone that's running for that position and say, I think you're going to do what I think is best as the chairperson. And that's why I made sure when I put out my portfolio, I could talk about how to do every single thing and how I can do it within a year.
All right. Bronte.
I think, as Justin said, it's really important to involve students in the decisions about what campaigns we are running. I think it is their money that these campaigns are being run on, and it's very important that they are engaged in those. I also, however, do think that it is important to have strong ideas, at least coming into this, with which to work with. I think that things like post-secondary education and sustainability are common goals with many students at UVic. And from my week campaigning, I feel like there are a few who would disagree that a future with a more sustainable future is not something that we all that we all strive for, or that more affordable post-secondary education isn't something that would benefit all of us. More inclusive space isn't something that would benefit all of us. I feel like these are goals that we can work with and we can involve students in them, but I don't necessarily think that we should abandon creating platform reports at all.
Mm-hmm. We have one final question from the moderators. If you are interested in asking questions after this portion of the debate is over, you can, we will have this question and then closing statements. So I would say during the closing statements, if you want to line up at that microphone, and then we don't have to pause while people get themselves sorted out. All right, Hugo.
If you get a mandate from the student body for divestment from fossil fuels, how would you support that mandate when the UVSS cannot compel the UVic Board of Governors to divest? And the second part is, what if the student body rejects divestment? Kaylee, you're first.
Well, I think it's important to do whatever students tell you to do. If the referendum does pass, I think that it's important that your executives do take it on. And I think one of the main ways of doing that is making sure that you're also running for Board of Governors, which I'm doing again this time, and making sure that you can kind of sit on there and really bring forward some of the ideas and the reasons why we want to divest. I also would really like to start doing some more research into it to see, what stocks are best to be reinvesting into. But also, I think it's really important to say that I want to expand the divestment campaign to not just be about fossil fuels, because the university's also invested in Nike, Walmart, places where they don't actually care about how much they pay their employees, and also, using children as slaves in terms of making your clothing. And I think that that's also something that we need to be bringing up on the Board of Governors.
All right, Bronte.
As Kaylee said, it's important that we listen to what the student body wants. And I do believe, however, that the divest referendum has a very good chance at passing. From volunteering with Divest UVic for the past couple of weeks, I've heard many, many positive responses to this referendum, and I feel like climate justice is something that students are passionate about. Sustainability is something students are passionate about. So I see this as a referendum that is most likely to pass. However, if it doesn't, of course, we have to respect the decision of the student body as a representative. I'm also running for Board of Governors, and I feel like I will bring that decision to both positions. I think that within UVSS, we may not be able to tell the university what to do, but we have the power of 17,000 students. And if that's what they want, we do have the power to make that happen. And I fully believe that with the strong members of Divest UVic that are already, and many of whom are in the audience and engaged, this is something that can happen and UVSS can support and provide resources for, especially if the student body is as passionate about it as I believe they are.
And Justin.
So I think part of the answer was in the question, really, is in the referendum question itself. Is this isn't really a vote to say like the UVSS is going to absolutely make this happen. This is a vote to say that you want the board of the UVSS to lobby on behalf of this issue, lobby the university, lobby the provincial government, anybody that's involved. That's what this question is about. It's not really about us making this happen. But to that effect, there's definitely a lot of avenues available. Obviously, it would be ideal if the university would work with us. That would be the first step, would be just trying to work together on this issue. If it doesn't, if that is not effective and the students do vote to go forward with this, I think that we have a lot of other avenues available to us. As Bronte just said, there's, over 17,000 students here, and student protests at a certain point would not be out of the question. Something that happens in a lot of other countries, happens right here in our country, mostly in Quebec. But last week when I was at the government lobbying, they asked me, quite a few of the MLAs asked, why are you not here with hundreds of students? Why are there a dozen of you here from this Alliance of BC Students? Where are the students of the University of Victoria? Why are you not on the lawn with hundreds of students fighting for these issues? And I think that we could do that if need be. Thanks.
All right, 30-second response from Kaylee.
Awesome. I completely echo what you just said there, Justin. And I think that the reason we didn't have all those students going towards the provincial government right now is because we're waiting to see what happens with the referendum, to see whether or not the UVSS should be getting involved. But also, I think that when I talked about research, I think that really is the most important thing to do, because I think the question is a little vague in terms of what are the more sustainable options? What exactly are we talking about there? And we need to actually put together, what is it going to look like? What should we be reinvesting in? Because if you don't have a plan going into it, the university is not going to listen to you.
Justin, 30-second response.
Kaylee, you said you echoed my points there. I just had a question for you, I guess. In your 2014, from last year, your video interview with the Martlet, at one point you said, to do with Divest, you said you do not believe in protests or student strikes. And I'm just wondering if you could clarify that, because you said that you echoed my points that I made about that, but then it seems contradictory. Thanks.
Bronte had her hand up.
Kaylee, you can respond.
You're okay? Okay. Kaylee,
Okay.
yeah, you can respond.
I don't know if you listened to the entire video, because I was actually talking about escalation techniques. I know that some people were talking about human oil spills, locking the Board of Governors into their meeting and making sure they didn't leave. And I'm sure that wasn't actually the club, but it was actually just some members that were talking about things that they would do. And I said, I think at this point we need to be working with the university, collaborating, and I don't think, working against them at this point is going to work. I think you should be going into those meetings and having conversations, running for Board of Governors, making sure that your voices are heard there before you start to escalate any further.
Is this a direct response to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Justin?
Okay, the direct quote from that video was, "We do not believe in protests or student strikes."
Kaylee.
And again, it's talking about escalation techniques, but also the UVSS striking, because at that point we hadn't passed a referendum, which means why would we be going out there when we don't actually have a strong mandate from students yet? So I said it's important to go to a referendum, see if students actually want this, and then put our resources behind it, one of which might be a protest.
Right. And Bronte.
As far as research goes on the divestment, I believe that research has been done by Divest UVic in regards to sustainable initiatives, but I also believe that we do not have the power to tell UVic what they can invest their money in, and they do have people available who who are making those decisions. While we can advocate that those are put into sustainable initiatives, and I believe that that's possible, and hopefully it's what happens, I do not think that research is going to stop us from enabling divestment.
And Kaylee.
I have to say I disagree. I think research is key to it, because when you go to the university and say, we have this idea, but we don't actually know how to do it, just find a way, it's up to you guys to figure it out, they're going to say no, and they have. I think it's important that we do the research and say, hey, this company looks like it's doing really well. Hey, like this type of energy is doing really well right now. I think we should be putting our resources there instead. And then maybe they'll start looking into that specifically and maybe find a way to divest the money.
Bronte.
I believe that Divest Uvic has put research into renewables and how well those do in stock market profiles. So that information is part of the petitions that are being sent to Jamie Castles, as well as you said that the university has already said no to this. And if that is true, then why do we not support protests at this point if you're saying that they're willing to work with us on this issue?
Kaylee.
Again, I don't know. It kind of seems like people aren't listening to what I'm saying, because again, as I said, all of us, Matt and myself both ran on last year making sure we had a referendum. So why would we be protesting when we have to see whether or not the referendum passes? If it does, then as the leaders, which was the entire exec team, making sure that we're listening to student voices. So when we get a strong mandate from them, then we go forward and do the protests and things like that. And also, in terms of Divest Uvic, we've had lots of students go up and talk to them and ask them, where are you going to be reinvesting? And they simply do not know.
Bronte.
From my experience with Divest Uvic, that is entirely untrue. Tristan Ryan, who's running on my slate, seems to have, as far as I've heard from him, multiple ideas about where that money could be going, and multiple research has been done into that. So I don't know which members of Divest Uvic we're going to talk to, and maybe these volunteers were new at the table, but I believe that if you talk to members of the leadership of this student group, you would be able to find those answers.
Kaylee.
Well, first of all, it's been hundreds of students that have talked to them that have said very publicly, no, they actually don't know where they're reinvesting or haven't really looked into the companies to do it. And the main answer is, well, we'll get the university to do it because they're the ones who have the financial expertise. But I think if we're going to be asking something of them, we need to have a plan to do so. And also, you're talking about your time with the Divest, but you just said that you've only been part of them for the last few weeks. So I don't know how much you really know there.
Bronte.
I said I've been tabling with Uvic for the past few weeks. I have been involved with them for a bit longer than that, but what I actually spoke to was that Tristan Ryan, who's running with me, has been involved with Divest for a very long time. And I don't speak that I'm an expert on this issue because I have only recently become involved in this, but I do believe it's important. I do believe that I've talked to quite a few people who are heavily involved with it, and I do not think that hundreds of students have spoken. I don't know how you could have spoken to hundreds of students about this issue, and I also don't understand how none of them could have spoken to someone who knew these things, because so many of the organizers are very well researched on the issue.
Kaylee.
Well, I mean, one, within my chair role, I do get the opportunity to talk to lots of students. I think we're both talking about engagement, and I have been engaging over the last year, and therefore have been hearing for lots of students over the entire year saying the same thing that I just said. And also, I think, if Tristan is, and I know that you are very well versed in divestment, I think it would be really awesome if maybe at some point, you could put out like some research that we could all take a look at in terms of the companies you've looked into, the stocks you've looked into, and how much money you think we should be reinvesting into each specific
Bronte.
If you check out divestuvic.org, you can find some of that material. Those information is available in their campaigning booklet and in their material that they produce. So I think that is available to students, and Divest would be very happy to provide you with it.
Justin, how about you respond, and then we might have to cut this short in the interest of time.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Climate Reality Project, and they also have a lot of materials online. Just Google Climate Reality Project, and you'll find all kinds of research on divesting. It's all out there. I mean, there's been a number of universities around the world that have already done this. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. We're going to move on to closing statements now. They're going to be a minute and a half. If you're interested in asking a question, line up behind the microphone that is over to the left here.
We're continuing with Alpha. So
I go first.
Kaylee? Okay. All right. Kaylee, you will start, and then Bronte, Justin.
Awesome. So first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to my team. Thank you, Refresh Uvic. You guys are absolutely wonderful people. You are so experienced. Everything you've done over the last couple of months with me has been incredible, and I'm really excited to be working with such a passionate group of people, so thank you. Second, I want to give a shout out to my mom, who came out from Surrey today to support me. Thank you so much. Thank you for being my rock the last 21 years. I really wouldn't have accomplished anything without you. Thirdly, I don't know if you guys know yet, but our new Vice President Academic and Provost was just announced today. It's Miss Valerie Cooney. She's wonderful, and I hope she listens to this because I want her to know you're my role model. You're someone who holds yourself with such elegance and grace, and I hope that one day I can be just like you as well. And lastly, on March 4th, vote for sustainability, vote for accountability, and vote for experience. Re-elect Kaylee Erickson and the Refresh Uvic team.
All right, Bronte.
First of all, I want to thank everyone who's here for being engaged and being part of this debate. I think it's great that so many students showed up, that so many people are here to watch this happen. I mean, really spending 2 hours in a debate, maybe not what you wanted to do on this Sunday afternoon, but you're here and you're engaging. That's great. I'd like to thank all the members of the involved team. You guys have been amazing. You've been like family. This has been a wonderful experience to campaign with all of you, and I'm so proud of every single one of you, especially for your speeches yesterday. Wow, you guys rock. I'd like to thank Greg and Kaylee for being great campaign managers this year, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. And also, thank everyone for making this a safe space, for making this a safe debate. I feel like it's been a really polite and it's been an interesting experience for myself. I've learned a lot, and it's been a pleasure to work with you and all the candidates. On March 4th, I really hope that everyone here will get involved and vote involve.
All right, Justin.
Yeah, I just want to, again, echo what Bronte just said. Thank you to everyone for coming out today, and for everyone who's hopefully listening to this on the radio right now. I'm sure there's some people out there listening. Yeah, I mean, it's just great to see so many people involved. It's such a great slate name. At the end of the day, you know, like people have said, we're a pretty small group. That's just myself, Justin Whitehead. There's Jade Taylor and Jordan Crocker, who have been in the back of the room here for the whole time. Nice wave. And yeah, we also have publicly said, you know, we had a small list of people that we'd also really like to work with. Some of those people again are Sky, he's running as Adele with Involve. We'd really like to work with Selene. She's running for events with Involve. And Kenya is running as for external relations with Involve. She's been doing amazing work. And yeah, and personally myself, I know, where are you? Where's Mayim? There he is. Yeah, Mayim's been great. I like Mayim personally, and I'm getting some signals from my group that I forgot to mention. Wesley Boyd, he's also been doing some great work with us with the ABCS, and really appreciate that too. Yeah, so tomorrow just come out and vote for all the best candidates that you'd like to. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're now moving on to the portion where we'll be taking questions from the audience. I will just quickly run down how we're going to do this. Audience members are going to get about 20 seconds to address either specific candidates or all three. If you are asking a specific question of a candidate, the candidate you address will get 1.5 minutes to respond. Other candidates have the option for a 30-second response if they choose. If the question is for the group, each candidate will get a minute to respond. If you can say your name and then ask your question, we can get started.
Hi there. I'm Tristan Ryan. I'm addressing my question to Kaylee Erickson. I believe that you kind of fundamentally misunderstand what Divest Uvic is trying to do and the way in which they're trying to do it. And I'd be very happy to meet with you at some time to inform you about our reinvestment strategy. Basically, we're asking the endowment board to meet the goal of fiduciary duty simply without investing in fossil fuels. That is all we're asking. And it's a little frustrating that you've been the chairperson of the UVSS for the entire year and you haven't bothered to engage with one of the most prominent environmental groups on campus.
Do you have a question, Tristan?
Reach clarity. I guess my question is, why haven't you spoken to us to achieve that clarity?
All right, Kaylee, you have a minute and a half.
So my response is actually when I went to clubs and course union days, I signed up for every single club, one of which was divest. I never got an email, so I've never been able to be engaged. But I did actually get, I was part of the Facebook group, and so for volunteering and things like that, and I did offer my time, some of which didn't end up working out. But I am happy to work with the group, and I look forward to doing that over the next year as the chair again, hopefully.
Response? Yeah, Justin has a response.
I mean, I'm a little troubled by that response. It kind of goes back to the sitting on 40 committees, signing up for every single club and course union and then not being involved simply because you didn't get an email. I mean, we have the opportunity to be involved in anything that we want to be on campus. That's the whole point of all these clubs and course unions. And I feel that if you're really interested in something, you have to reach out and make that connection with that group on your own. Thanks.
Kaylee, you can respond.
To respond to that, it's actually not within the chair's duties to sit on any clubs or course unions, and I'm not being paid to do that, but I've done it on my own time because I wanted to make sure that I was involved. And, regardless of whether or not I was actually going to do things with the club or not, I think it's important that I do get emails just so I can keep myself briefed, and if there's something that I want to be part of, I can choose to do that on my own time. So that's kind of my response to what you just said.
Bronte?
On that response, I as Justin said, I feel like if you really did want to find out what Divest has to say and what they have to offer, it's quite easy to find their email address and get a hold of them to ask them questions. And especially if you're concerned about things like reinvestment or their own research, I feel like they're easily accessible. They're often in the quad. I mean, these questions are quite easy to be asked.
Kaylee, I think this will be the last response on this question. We have a long line of questions from the audience.
So one, I have asked, and the answer that I gave around them not knowing was what I was told. Maybe that was someone that wasn't as experienced telling me that answer. So I look forward to working with you guys as well. But also, why would I be, taking students' money to go and work on things that a referendum hadn't been passed for? And again, it comes right back to my main point of if the referendum passes, then I can spend my time as chair working on the Divest campaign. And if it doesn't, then I'll continue to do the things that I did over the last year.
All right, next question.
Hello, my name is Daphne Shaid, and I came in to be involved in student politics through the advocacy unions here at Uvic and at Camosun as well. And there is stigma involved in being part of these places. It's not just objective, it can be subjective as well, in the feeling that you're being stigmatized by involvement. So stigma does exist, but what are your plans to lift the advocacy groups out of the basement and start showcasing the important work which they do, which should be the pride of this student union? And this is for all candidates.
We're going to start with the left. We're going to start with Bronte and go across because we lost track of where we were in the rotation.
Thank you, Daphne. That's a really great question. I've really enjoyed being involved with the advocacy groups that I have spoken with this year as working with UVSS. I have sat on advocacy council, been asked to sit there with Kaylee a couple of times, and it's been a great experience to see what points of view they have as far as being more involved on the board and being more involved in the society. And I think that needs to happen because the perspectives that are given within that council and within the representatives on the board are extremely important. I hope that if I'm elected, I can continue to support them in their work and listen and learn more from those groups because I think that the work they have to offer is exciting, important, and extremely valued. I have worked with the Women's Center, and I have really enjoyed that work as far as Take Back the Night, as far as the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Memorial March, and I look forward to working on the creative activism project that Jess Major is planning for April. I hope to be more involved with more advocacy groups in the future, and I strongly support Sox referendum.
Justin.
Yeah, just to start with the point that Bronte ended off with there, the referendum question for the Students of Color Collective, they're the only advocacy group on campus that does not have a direct funding from the students. So I'd really, really like to see that. And as much as I can, I'd like to encourage everyone to vote yes on that referendum question. As far as bringing them out of the basement goes, I know the Women's Center is not in the basement. I'm not entirely sure where the physical location of them all is, but yeah, I mean, that's part of that referendum is for the Students of Color Collective especially, is to get them more funding so that they can get out there and do more events. as far as the rest of it goes, it falls more under the portfolio for Kaylee Zakis, and I saw her nodding while you were asking that question, and I'm sure, you know, I've worked fairly closely with her on a few issues this year, and I'm sure that she would be happy to do something to that effect. Thanks.
Kaylee. So some of the main ways that we did it this year that I think we should be continuing with is making sure that we're trying to highlight their events by putting them on our Facebook pages. It'd be really nice to see them online even more. Making sure that we're giving them the resources. And I know that for some of the events that have happened, we've made sure that they can have our graphics department, which they don't normally have. And I think that that's really important. In terms of the SOC referendum, Refresh Uvic is definitely in favor of that passing because we think that there should be a dedicated fee that goes towards every single advocacy group because they do really important work. This past year, I got to work with SSD quite a bit, and I've done that for the last 3 years. This year, we worked on policies. I started a petition for them, and also we worked on the mental health campaign quite closely. I was with Bronte and a lot of the board when we took back the night with the Women's Center. I think it also kind of goes into anti-oppression training too, and making sure that the board is being willing to engage and making sure that we set up regular anti-oppression training times so that we can have them more than just once.
All right, we'll open it up to the next question.
Hi, my name is Guthrie Prentice, and this question is directed at all the candidates. Recently, news has come to light that the BC government is planning to deprive the people who default on their student loans of their driver's licenses. I'm wondering, as chair, what you guys will do to encourage the Student Society to advocate against this?
Starting with Justin.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. As I said earlier, I write online. I've got a pretty good audience, and that was I definitely posted that the day that came out, and I think it's an absolutely ridiculous proposal. I think it's punitive. I mean, you're taking students who already are having difficulties repaying their student loans, and now you're threatening to take away their ability to get to their jobs. Most communities in BC are not all that accessible to transit. I know I grew up in the Comox Valley, and the buses there come about maybe once every hour, and they don't run that late into the evening. So I'm completely against it, and I've been thinking of some things that I could do personally. Whether or not I am elected as chair, I would like to work on that issue. I have a few avenues. I know a few MLAs that I've been talking to. I can't really share the details of those discussions here, but there's definitely, we have a lot of allies in the BC government already against that issue, and I'm going to continue to work toward fighting that. Thanks.
Kaylee.
One of the main things as chair is being the spokesperson and being able to liaise with both the university and government along with the external relations director. And I know that Greg already put out a press release. There's already been media coverage around it, and I'd like to see more of that. I'd like us to, start doing petitions, start going to the provincial government and talking to them about why this isn't okay. Start talking to ICBC and see if maybe there's some conversations we can have with them there so that they can say, no, we don't think this is right either. And I think that within our role, we really have the opportunity to work with the university as much as possible and maybe get them behind the campaign as well, because I think it becomes a lot more powerful when you have a huge body like that backing something that you want.
And Bronte.
As Justin and Kaylee articulated, I think that this the punishing students for not being able to pay back their student debts more so than anything just points to the fact that post-secondary education in BC is unaffordable, and that students are unable to pay debt. That shouldn't be a punishment. Students should be supported in that. And I think that while this campaign would fall under external relations, I would be more than happy to continue to work against that legislation passing. And if it were to pass against it for its removal, I think that hopefully it will not pass. Hopefully that we can do work against it. Members of my slate have already spoken to the media about this legislation, and I feel it's entirely unfair. I plan to put any effort I have, if I'm elected, into fighting this and legislation like that makes education even more of an elite institution in BC.
And next question.
Cool. Hey guys, my name is Oliver Tennant, and I am the president of the Uvic Urban Development Club. And I mean, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for running for what often is a thankless job, right? So the Uvic Urban Development Club, over the last 2 years, has been heavily involved in the sub-renovation committee. That's been when Matt ran it, and then Anas, and now Val, actually. And a lot's been done, but also a lot hasn't been done. And I was curious as to your vision for the sub-renovation, And specifically, Justin, my question was for you. With your interview with the Martlet, you talked about solar panels for the roof of the sub-renovation correlating with the new campus plan. Now, we also work on the campus plan too, and they are two different entities. So I wanted you to perhaps discuss your visions on that. Okay,
sure.
Thank you.
I believe what I said specifically was that there's a lot of students on campus who are interested in seeing a sustainable energy option for the student union building specifically. Since that interview, I heard more from students, and I spent the weekend doing actually a lot of research on that issue. And in BC, we get 95% of our energy already comes from zero carbon sources. So, and our energy in BC is also very, very cheap by comparison, especially, to other provinces like Ontario. So Uvic itself actually in 2012 released a study on the viability of solar and wind in Victoria specifically. And it showed that there would be about a 37-year break-even point for solar in this area. And the winds around campus specifically are too calm to put up any, wind turbines. I think there's quite a few members of the involved slate that have mentioned getting the student union building down to a zero impact, zero carbon environment. And I think that there are a lot of avenues to do that. As it turns out, maybe solar and wind are not the best avenues to do that, but we definitely have the resources to make this a zero carbon environment. I hope that kind of answers the question that you were asking. Thank you.
Do you have responses from the other two candidates for this at all? No? Next question from the floor.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Robertson, and I am currently the assistant at the food bank. And this question is for Kaylee. I've been hearing about your plans to make the food bank a charitable organization, and I just have a couple concerns about that in terms of the work that might create for staff. But what I really want to address right now is how that might change the way that students perceive the food bank. Right now, since students pay into it, it's seen as a community resource, and when we tell them that this is something you can access because everyone has contributed, they really feel that it's appropriate for them to access it, and there's not a lot of stigma associated with it. So we're finding that works really well. And so turning into a charitable organization, I wonder if that might have impacts on how students see it. And so I'm wondering what you might do to ensure that we continue our work of reducing stigma around accessing the food bank, and also who you might consult when going forward with this decision if you choose to do so. Thank
you. Good question. I think that a lot of the ending the stigma is around how we market the food bank, how we continually use language around it, what our signs say, things like that. In terms of wanting to make it a charitable organization, that came from not wanting to have to keep increasing student fees, which I think is a little bit counterproductive to want to have students pay into a service that's there because students don't have enough money. And so I think that it would really help, the students who don't have enough money to not have to keep increasing their student fees in order to keep this service going. And I know that a lot of food banks are actually funded through community organizations and partners and things like that. And I think it would bring in a lot more money. And in terms of who we worked with, we worked with an auditor. We put our all of our financial accountants into one room. I've been working with the general manager. I also just told Sam, who's a food bank coordinator, and she's been brought into some of those conversations, and we'll continue to have those conversations as we go forward.
Bronte, response.
I just wanted to respond to that. Jasmine and Sam have done really great work in the food bank this year, and I'm kind of a bit curious why they haven't been consulted at first on this plan to make it a charitable organization. I feel like as huge stakeholders in the food bank, they have an important voice in what is done with that organization and and if there are issues with how it is advertised, why hasn't that been expressed?
Kaylee.
So my main response to that is I don't think there's an issue with how things are being marketed. That's not what I said. I think I said that we should continue marketing it the same way that we have been, because I think that that really talks about like the community aspect of the food bank. In terms of being the chair, you know, a lot of the work that I do is around policy, and this year I got to be the director of the food bank, and so it was kind of an idea that I came up with, and I said, I don't really know if this is even possible, so let's start having conversations, and we actually haven't, you know, started writing things down yet. It's been more of ideas, and I did tell Sam last week, and she was part of the meeting that we had at the end of last week.
Justin.
As chair, I mean, I would definitely, I would like to speak with the food bank, all the people who were involved with that, and see where they feel on that issue. If they supported it, and it sounds like there's a lot of support from students, I would definitely also be willing to move forwards with the charitable status, but definitely after consulting with them as well.
All right. Next question from the floor, please.
Hi, my name is Wesley Boyd. My question is primarily for Bronte, but also for Justin. I think that all candidates in the election have talked about wanting to decrease the financial burden that students already have. Personally, I think it's really good that Kaylee wanted to reduce wages. As a candidate for an executive position, I still support the idea. It's not unreasonable to think that an executive could make do spending or making less student money. Why is it you think that you're worth 2.5 times what I currently get by on with student loans? Why is 2 not enough?
Bronte.
I believe that minimum wage in BC is $10.25. Executives are currently paid $15, so I don't know how that would be 2 times what you're currently making.
I'm not talking about the hourly wage. Student loans basically max out at about $12,000 per year. Okay, that's what that number I'm referring to.
But this isn't a loan you're being given. This is payment for work that you are doing. I don't know if I also take out student loans. I'm also on loans, and I don't necessarily think that the way that my hourly payment per loans work, I'm not quite sure how that would work, should equal how much I'm paid for work that I do. While I support that students less financial burdens for students, I do also think that students should have access to well-paid jobs, and I think that the executive position is one of those, and students should be encouraged to pursue jobs which they can attempt to pay off those loans.
Justin?
Yeah, I mean, echoing again what Bronte just said, I mean, I believe in fair pay for fair work. I really don't think that $15 an hour is excessive. That's a number that a lot of people across Canada and in the United States are pushing for as the new minimum wage, because that $15 an hour doesn't even meet the standard for a living wage in Victoria for a single person. So I really don't think that that's excessive. And also, to the point that I made earlier, the amount that the executives are paid is, sure, it might be great for a lot of people, but somebody who is a student with a disability who relies on grants for tutoring and for assistive technology, that amount of money just puts them out of reach of those grants. And if you take that into account, a lot of students would actually lose money even currently by accepting this position. So to ask them to give up more would just not be fair. Thanks.
Really? Okay, we only have 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get it.
We're actually going to extend this question period because we have such a long line of people. We're all good to go till about 5 o'clock. So next question from the floor.
Hello, my name is Trevor Hopton. My question is primarily for Bronte and Justin. So over the past year, we've seen the phenomenal job Kaylee has done as running as chair and what she's done for the UVSS. What makes you two think you're a better person for the chair position than herself? Thank you.
Where will we start? This is for you two. Should we start Justin this time? Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question. Why do I think I'm better than somebody else? I don't know. I like a lot of the things that Kaylee has done this year. I think she's put in a lot of effort. I think that she's really, she's gotten a lot of things done. I watched her video from 2014 and she did follow through with a lot of things that she said she was going to do. I don't know. There's been a few concerns as far as how some of those things got done, like the mental health campaign. I would never say anything bad about the campaign itself, but there's been some concerns as to how it happened. You know, it happened outside of the campaigns committee, and it was kind of as Bronte had mentioned, there'd been a bit of stepping on one another's portfolios and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't think that I'm better than any other individual person. I don't think anybody else is better than me. I think, all I can do is say that I have the skills necessary to do this job. And I think that, a lot of students would support me in doing so. Thanks.
All right, Bronte.
As Justin said, I think this is a loaded question, and I do think that it's quite awkward to be asked why you're better than another person. I don't think that's true. I've had the opportunity to work with Kaylee this year as staff, and I think that a lot of the work that has been done by the board this year has been great work, especially in regards to the mental health committee. As myself, I hope that as chairperson, I can expand that work into other avenues of the UVSS involving other campaigns as well, and also to engage students more, because I do think that that is an issue, and I will remain to that fact. However, I don't think that we should be bringing other people down. I think that we should be lifting other people up, and I kind of find that this question, it requires that someone brings someone else down.
All right. Next question from the floor, please.
So my question has to do with interactions with advocacy groups and how the candidates will ensure that all members of the board will attend anti-oppressive training as needed throughout the year. Because I believe that once during a camp in April, when a lot of people might not be around, is not sufficient enough. And I'm also wondering, and the second part of that question is where you're at right now. Where are you from? Who are you from? And I guess that's it. And how will you work as a chair to structure space so that people feel comfortable and not feel like they can actually attend meetings in a good way?
We're gonna start with Kaylee. That's where we left off in the rotation.
Wonderful. Having attended anti-oppression training this year, I know how valuable that it was, and I think that I've relayed that to my entire Refresh UVic team, who would all want to be at the anti-oppression training, and I think it's important that we continually tell everybody, this is the type of things that you learn. We're working towards making the UVSS less oppressive for everybody that's involved. I think that, you sent a whole list of readings to Valerie and myself, and I think that those are really valuable as well to be giving out. It's very true. You gave it out, and I think it'd be important to send that out to the board and maybe have them be doing some work and some readings outside of those anti-oppression trainings so they can come into it with some perspectives and have conversations. I'm personally from Surrey, BC. Say what you will, but I really love where I'm from. And I can say that I am a settler here, specifically on the Lekwungen and Wasanic territories. And I think that in terms of comfort levels and things, I think that that's a really important thing to bring up in April at a board retreat and just kind of talk about, where is everyone comfortable, what kind of spaces, create that at our board meetings going forward. How can we make sure that everyone feels like they're included and they want to participate?
Bronte.
Hi, David. I think we've talked about this question a bit before, but as I'd state again, I truly valued the experience I had at anti-oppression training this year as staff, and all the members of my slate that were on the board last year were involved in the first session of anti-oppression training. I would advocate to have it done in April before the board term starts, and to have every member complete anti-oppression training before they begin their term. I do think that it may be necessary to hold it more than once, because I believe we are always learning and unlearning processes of oppression, And as to locate myself, I am an uninvited settler to this land. I have been and continue to be. And I come from Galliano Island, BC, but I recognize that my presence here is an aspect of colonialism, and that continues to be perpetuated in the way in which I am here. And I hope to be mindful of that in my position. And I think that is a way to make people, that being mindful of that and being mindful of other ways in which oppression is a part of our society are important ways of making people comfortable and making spaces safer.
And Justin.
I'd like to acknowledge too. Obviously I'm a settler here. To kind of go in reverse order, I'm arguably the whitest person in this room. If we had the spotlights on, I'd probably be glowing. I'm also a cisgendered heterosexual male. So as far as the genetic lottery of privilege goes, I've got quite a few on that list, but I'm also very cognizant of that. And I was speaking with Billy of the Students of Color Collective the other day, and just saying that the best that I can do is be an ally. And I think in doing that with that collective especially is that all I could do is trust those advocacy groups to know what's best for themselves. I'm not here to tell anybody else what they should be doing with their groups. I'm also a feminist. My mom has run the Women's Center in Campbell River for almost a decade, and I've done a lot of work with them. And I just support the advocacy groups in their own endeavors. Thanks.
All right, next question.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Sterling. I'm an economics student here at Uvic, which means basically politically everybody doesn't like me, but for different reasons. I got involved in examining the divestment movement when a member of Involve came in and spoke with our econometrics class recently. I've been through the Divest website, top to bottom. I've been through all the financial disclosure documents for the university's portfolio, which is how we learned that we do invest in Walmart, and we do invest in FLIR Imaging, a U.S. military contractor, and we do invest in Nike, that has a spotty reputation in terms of child rights and workers' rights. My question is regarding clarity for divestment. I think Tristan did an excellent job a moment ago clarifying that divestment is about telling our financial managers what they cannot invest in. They are to maintain their fiduciary responsibility while bringing money out of fossil fuels. Is it not true that there is, in fact, no prescriptive plan for what those funds must flow into? And furthermore, is it not true that there is nothing to stop that capital from flowing right back into Walmart and Nike and MasterCard?
All right, we'll start with Bronte.
Sorry, could you repeat your name?
Adam Sterling.
Hi, Adam.
Hi.
I do believe that is true. We don't have the power to take away fiduciary responsibilities from the university, neither should we. But I would hope that they would listen to the endeavors of Divest Uvic to reinvest that money into sustainable initiatives and away from places like you said, like Walmart and Nike, that may not be the smartest investments and maybe have other moral reasons why we do not want to invest in them. Unfortunately, we cannot fight them on all levels of investment, and maybe we can in the future, but Divest Uvic has a specific cause, and that cause is to divest from fossil fuels. And unfortunately, we cannot exactly, as I said earlier, say where that money will go. So yes, you are correct in saying that.
Thank you very much.
Justin.
This kind of question comes up in a lot of different issues. I've done some advocacy work as a feminist, and I've been approached by a lot of men in asking, why don't we have men's groups and this and that and the other thing? But there are a lot of problems in the world, but focusing on one issue like divesting from fossil fuels does not mean that we are then somehow incapable of also dealing with other issues, right? So I think that this particular thing, the divestment question, again, it's the referendum question is simply to ask: do we want to lobby the UVic administration and our provincial government, through the extension thereof, to remove our investments in fossil fuels? I think we should also do. It would be wonderful if, I don't know, if you're interested, we need people to head up a campaign to also divest from those other very important issues. Thank you.
I know just enough about investing to know that I would be horribly unqualified to do that.
All right.
But I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Kaylee.
Adam, I do think that the money is going to flow right back in, regardless of if we divest or don't divest. There's going to be people that are going to reinvest into those companies no matter what. But I think that the goal of divestment is it is very much a moral argument to decide what our university specifically invests into and not what other people are going to end up doing when we do that. But in terms of expanding the campaign, I do think that's so important. And yeah, as Bronte said, like fossil fuels, maybe we can't expand into those other things, but I think that we should be, because, human rights to me is something that matters quite a bit. And I think that if we can stop human rights travesties from happening across the world, we should be doing that right now.
All right. Next question from the floor. Thank you, Adam.
Hello, my name is Greg Atkinson. And before I ask my question, I just want to say thank you for being here and putting your names forward, for doing this. As someone who's been through the campaign process, I know how difficult it is. I compare it to the longest and longest job interview I've ever done in front of the most people I've ever done one in front of. So thank you for that. My question has to do with one of the proposals that came out of the anti-oppressive training this year, and that was around the changing of the title of chairperson. And the idea being that, if we change the name chairperson to something like director of internal and university affairs or something similar to that, that we would express an unwillingness to have hierarchy within the executive team and within the board. And so I'm curious to hear your individual perspectives on that. And I'm also curious to hear whether or not that's something you're going to be pushing forward in the next year.
All right, we'll start with Justin.
Oh, well, I mean, in our Constitution for our country, well, actually not the Constitution. When we talk about the Prime Minister through conventions and whatnot, we often refer to them as a first among equals, just in the sense that they're supposed to be kind of chairing things. The job is really supposed to be bringing everyone together and making sure that at an administrative level, everyone is working as one and our government functions. I think that that's the same role as a chairperson has. Chairing a meeting, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily in charge of the meeting. You kind of are supposed to be controlling the flow of the meeting. Often chairs don't have voting privileges either. So, I don't really see it as a hierarchical system. It depends on how the person in that position operates. I definitely would not operate in that way. I would operate in the way that I just mentioned, as just one among equals, here to facilitate internal relations, basically. Thank you.
Kaylee.
I completely agree with Justin. I think that it literally means you just chair meetings. That means facilitating, trying to bring both sides together, putting in your point of view when you think that it's important, voting when you think it's important. A lot of the times I didn't end up voting until it was like a tie or to make a tie or something like that. And also, in terms of talking about hierarchy, like, why do we have a chair debate? It was something that I was trying to change this year that we didn't end up changing, but I don't think that it's, appropriate for 3 chairs to get up and talk on behalf of their entire slate for an hour and a half and talk about, if you're asking me about events, I think that, Chris can answer events more than me. That's not my portfolio, and I don't think that I should have the right to be able to talk for all of them.
All right, and Bronte.
I strongly echo what Kaylee said about the chair debate. I believe that I shouldn't be speaking on the behalf of the rest of my exec team, and that they all have far more knowledge of those areas than I do. However, in what Greg said, I am in agreement with changing the name of the director to Internal and Relations and University Affairs, if that becomes the name, because I believe that while the chairperson may not actually have any more authority, and it doesn't, that position has equal responsibility to all execs, I think that name does denote a certain amount of hierarchy within it, which gives that person, which can donate hierarchy within the board, and I don't think that's necessary for the board to function. I think that that title is not a requirement in doing your job, and that it does pertain a certain amount of hierarchy, which I think can negatively affect board operations.
Justin?
Just to speak to that a little bit, I think the only reason why we're having a chair debate right now is that that resolution, unfortunately, we weren't able to get quorum for that meeting. I can't speak as to which way it would have gone, but right now the policy does say that the chairperson is the face of the organization. So as it's structured right now, I think, just as an explanation for everybody listening, that's why this debate has happened as it has, but I'm definitely not opposed to the changes that were suggested during that meeting.
And Kaylee.
The reason I didn't personally like the name change is because I don't think it adequately represents what that person does. It's just naming 2 things out of this large platform of things that I've had to do as my responsibilities and duties, and I don't feel like it adequately summed that up, and so it just kind of seemed weird to come up with just that specific term. But I think it really matters about how you function and how you operate as the chair, and is making sure that you're not acting like you're better than everybody else. And I don't feel like I did that.
Bronte.
I do think that I think that the chairperson name no more dictates what that role does than internal relations, if not less. I mean, the only thing that you do is not to chair meetings. You do have, as Kaylee said, a much broader portfolio. And I also think that bringing in an external chair may be an option we want to explore, so that meetings are less hierarchical, and so that meetings have more equal representation of all of the board members, because everyone has one vote.
Kaylee.
In terms of making the chairperson internal relations, I mean, the chair sits on maybe 5 committees internally. They actually aren't very internal. They're actually pretty external in terms of always working with the university. And that's how I kind of view that role a little bit. But also in terms of spending money on an external chair, you know, I think that we just sat here and we talked about food security, we talked about debt, we talked about students that are struggling. Why are we wasting their student money on bringing on an external chair when you could just have someone else chair the meeting like the chairperson? I don't think we need to be using students' funds that way.
Bronte?
If it is a matter of student funds, and like Kaylee said, I don't want that students to have to pay any more, I would like to explore the avenue of a rotating chair within the board. That would give equal representation to all board members without any extra cost to students. I don't see why it should be one person who chairs every meeting.
Kaylee?
So I don't know if you know this, but Ben Johnson is the one that trains the chair to be able to know Robert's rules. And he's the one that said that he actually didn't like the idea of a rotating chair because that would expand how much work that he has to do in teaching all 5 or multiple people the same thing. And then if you're not utilizing that, we only have 2 meetings every month, which means I'm actually not chairing very many board meetings. But you know, if we're having multiple people who aren't actually exercising their skills very often, you have to continually teach them. That's a lot of work to put on a unionized staff member.
All right, next question from the floor, please.
Hi there. My question's for all candidates. All of you support student debt reduction in some way or another, which is really great. But living wage in Victoria is $18 an hour, considerably higher than the $15 an hour that executives make and that Kaylee Erickson promised to reduce from. So I just was curious whether each candidate believes that students working full-time while pursuing post-secondary deserve to make a living wage, and if so, why? If not, why not? Thank you.
We'll start with you, Kaylee.
And you're talking like in general, like in Victoria as a whole?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. No, I definitely support increasing it. And the reason is because a lot of us, and there was an article that was actually done about our generation saying we're the ones that are moving back in with our parents because we can't afford to, you know, rent. We can't afford food. We can't afford many different types of things, which is why we have so many social programs that are set up right now. And it's for really like a majority of our generation. You know, in terms of like increasing fees all the time, you know, right now we're looking at a 13% increase to residence fees. We're looking at increases to athletics fees for CARSA because the university built it without a funding model and now they're taking it out on students. And so I think that, you know, I really do support increasing the living wage in Victoria because I think that, you know, we want to be able to ensure that students are able to afford their basic necessities.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you asked me. I guess I meant specifically in jobs that the chairperson would have some say over the wages that people make. Not in Victoria in general, sorry.
Oh, okay. The chair actually doesn't decide wages. That would go through a specific committee that I don't personally sit on. I think that it'd have to be negotiated with our general manager. All the wages in the building in terms of staff happen through the union, and that happens through a contract, which we don't negotiate every single year. It's over a set period of time, and I don't think that this board will be able to negotiate because I think we just signed it. But in terms of the board, if we wanted to renegotiate, we could sit down as a board collectively in April or May and took a look at, you know, where would that student fee, where would all that money come from? Where can we reallocate? And I think that you'd have to do that through raising student fees, which is something that I wouldn't want to do.
Monte?
I fully support what you said, Tristan, about students and everyone in general deserving a minimum living wage, and I believe in Victoria it's $18 an hour or more. And I think that's strongly supported. I mean, it's $10.25 right now. That's not sustainable. However, as Kaylee said, I also don't want that to come simply for the board out of student fees. I do think that it's something to consider if we do negotiate with the union. I don't believe that's happening this coming year. But I do think that students do deserve in general, people deserve a higher minimum wage than we currently have.
Justin?
Well, in this debate, I mean, again, we're kind of damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, right? If we lower the pay of the executive, you know, it makes it so it's not as accessible to all students to even get into this position, and it also goes against the student movements in general, pushing for fairer wages for people in general. On the other side, if we increased it so that we were making $18 an hour, we did raise it to the livable wage, that is coming out of student pockets as well. So I think the real issue here is that we need to, as the people that I spoke with last week, we need to show up to the BC legislature, which is right down the street, with hundreds of students, if not thousands, and we need to be demanding these things from our government. We have over an $800 million, thank you. We have over an $800 million surplus right now, and yet, we're being nickel and dimed. Like this ICBC thing, they're looking at getting $3 million a year back from students, and that's not fair. Thank you.
Hi, Guthrie again. Just one quick question for Justin concerning the town meetings. Wondering how, if your plan got implemented, how you would make sure that every student got a fair voice and no one tried to over lobby or overtake their, with more voice time than is necessary. Ironically, like I just did. Thanks.
Well, to speak exactly to what you just did, there's only one fellow left behind you. I mean, it was, you're taking initiative to ask those questions. And, in a town hall environment, that would be open to any student who decides to show up. Same with who's here right now. I mean, there's a few empty chairs. This is open to anybody who wants to show up, wants to be involved. Hopefully, as the executive board, if I get elected next year, I mean, that's definitely a big part of what I would like to do. And what students keep saying they would like to see is more involvement. And I think that the town hall meetings would encourage that. And as far as making, allowing people fair time, I mean, as I said, it wouldn't be something super formal. It would just be sort of, we would give a breakdown of what we've been doing with student funds, and just sort of, it would be more of like a very informal Q&A, just kind of, come talk to your board members. And, if one person was monopolizing that time, I think it could just be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Thanks.
So my name is Brian. My question is for everyone. The UVSS has a budget around $12 million. That's a lot of money. What experience do you and your team have that would qualify you to run an organization like this?
Bronte, we're starting with you.
I believe that a lot of my team members do have a lot of knowledge in organizing and in working within the UVSS itself. We have Kaylee Zakis, who is returning to the student affairs position and already has institutional knowledge within the organization. Kenya Rogers, who is a director at large currently on the UVSS board. Myself, I'm already working for the UVSS. So these are institutional knowledge. We already understand various parts of the organization and how this money is currently allocated, but also there is staff within the sub whose jobs are to deal with these finances and advise student representatives, because obviously we are students, and this will be the first time that any of us have had this, or the second time in the case of Kaylee, have had this much of this large of an organization at our hands. But that does not mean that we're not capable of it under the correct advisement from people who who do have a larger understanding. And I think that there are a lot of great staff on board in the UVSS, such as Ben and Dale and Seamus, who have great ways in which we can learn to do that. And that also falls to Tristan or the finance, whoever is finance next year.
Justin.
My Jordan Crocker here, who is running for director of finance. Yeah, almost flubbed that one. He has a lot of background experience. He's the current, correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, you're the current director of finance and operations for the undergraduates of political science. Yes. Okay. Yeah. He has a lot of relevant experience. Myself, I was on the board for the North Island Students Union for 2 years as well. And so I have some experience there. And like Bronte just mentioned, I mean, there's a tremendous staff. The general manager, I mean, most of that is handled by them. But as far as financial decisions go, I mean, I would definitely defer to those experts and to my director of finance, Jordan Crocker. Thank you.
And Kaylee.
In terms of experience, let's talk about two of us. So for me, if I'm reelected, this will be my third term on the board, which means that I have a lot of institutional knowledge, not only for the UVSS, but in terms of the university governance as well, having sat on the Board of Governors and Senate. But talking about Lloyd a little bit, because he'll be the one really dealing with our finances. Lloyd is the most experienced person running this year. And he started his own business which has been incredibly successful, just on the finance part. But also they'll be doing with marketing and communications, and he's done a lot of work there as well. Communications also as a community leader and in working with his residents and working with the rest of campus. And I'm really excited to say that I think that we do have, just in general, the most experienced executive team as a whole.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to have to, for the purposes of the broadcast.
Is there time for one more?
Maybe
just one?
Okay. You can ask one more question.
Okay. A lot of people have been asked tough questions today. I just wanted to ask a fun one because we often point out what's wrong in politics. Would each of you be willing to tell this crowd what your favorite thing is about the other two opponents? Bronte, I can start with you.
Sure, that's a fun question. I've had the pleasure of working with Kaylee this year, and I find that the passion that she has for work with mental health is amazing. I think that she has amazing drive as far as that avenue goes, and that she's done an incredible work. I've been a pleasure to learn from her and to work from her in that facility. I think that Justin, I've only recently met you, but I think you have a great diplomatic attitude as far as student politics goes, and I think you're extremely passionate about sustainability issues on campus, and I think that's great because those are some things I'm passionate about as well.
Justin.
Yeah, I haven't really worked with either of the other two candidates, but I just recently met you as well, Bronte, and I think you've been really courageous through all this. You know, you've dealt with some flack, and you handled it really, really well, and you're a strong speaker, and you seem really, really passionate about what you're doing. And Kaylee too. I mean, like I said, I watched all your stuff from last year. We were working together at one point on all this, and you really did follow through with a lot of the things that you said you wanted to do. Any obstacles got in your way, I don't know, it seems that you definitely got done what you wanted to get done. So yeah, you have really good drive. Thank you.
All right, Kaylee.
I have lots of things. So starting with Bronte, you really do, you are super accessible all the time. Whenever I send you an email or have you do anything, like, you're right on it. And I know that as a chair, you would continue to do that great work. In terms of even food security and things that you're passionate about, getting involved with the campus community gardens, making sure you're involved with the Martlet, I think you've done a lot of really fantastic work. You have some great ideas, and I would be more than happy, if not elected, to pass on the reins to you. Justin, just in terms of even running for chair, I mean, good for you. I mean, you started at Uvic last semester, and to have that much passion for student politics and just to want to run the organization and having so many great ideas on how to engage more with students, I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, for the purposes of our broadcast, thank you for listening. Thank you for attending in person and asking all these questions. Voting day is March 4th, so we hope this helps you make your decision when you go out and vote.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.